I know all this because I was the first person to ever get stem cells injected into my dick. I was writing for Men's Health magazine. They wanted me to do like a 6-month foray of all the things a guy could do to enhance his sexual performance or libido or size or anything. So they had me doing like no ejaculation for a month, PRP and the shockwave therapy, all this crazy stuff for this big article that came out. I think
You're such a lab rat.
Called New Year, New Dick. But Dr. Judd Brandis is a men's sexual health physician who recently published a paper that actually shows a demonstrable increase in a guy's size. Dr. Brandis's protocol was PRP, it's very similar to the stem cells. He probably didn't use stem cells because it would have been really expensive for the procedure, combined with the use of a pump, like a nitric oxide precursor supplement. And it was something like 8 to 12 weeks, and they saw a noticeable improvement.
In size.
So, yeah, gosh, is the fact that you're just like messing around with that area a whole lot for 12 weeks just generally gonna increase size? I don't know. Anybody who's cardiovascularly fit.
Can I tell you where the best place is, Ben, normally? Is down the back. Okay. Like this back vein that goes down on the wrist bone. That has so far been like the most
somebody knows what's up when they know the vein. Because on my left side, it's that one. On my right side, it's
like it's been a long time since the inner arm has been a place to get. I'm
Danica's
just going to tell you.
Just like me. Like
it's been many years.
I'll tell people, and I tell them the one, and it works.
Yeah, it's always this back.
And then occasionally there's some like anesthesiologist, emergency room doc who's incredible, who's just like, oh, it doesn't matter, I can work with anything. They'll do the hand, like the good ones can do the hand.
If you don't get the vein when you first go in, like I'm always like, don't even try.
Oh, he's good. I can see the red flash.
Okay, good.
Was it the one that she told you to do? Yeah. Score. Nice.
It's bad when you know the vein. It's real. It says you sit down for a lot of IVs.
Yeah, so that one in the middle does a pretty good job. It's up to you. If you think you could stick one of those, that's cool. Good luck, though.
Good luck.
I dare you. If I give myself an IV, which I do, I use this one or the inside of the right arm.
You can thread yourself and you do it yourself?
I give myself an NAD push IV once. 1,000 milligrams in 11 minutes.
No.
With a trash can next to me.
I did NAD a couple of years ago, and I did the loading dose NAD, so 5 treatments within 10 days. It was, I think, maybe the 4th out of 5 treatment, and we were doing a big vitamin push first, and the little catheter or the valve thing that hangs below the bag and shows like the drip rate was backfilled.
Oh.
You couldn't see how much it was dripping. Oh. And so we were wide open. And then we switched over and pushed the NAD in. And then as soon as she walked away, I was like, how are we going to know?
There's like a delay.
How are we going to know how fast And I passed out. I didn't even finish my sentence.
You passed
I
out.
went, whoa. It was wide open. And I just like, a huge rush through my body. And then I passed out. And passing out is such a weird thing. Like I feel like I literally saw like my life flashing before me and all my, but what it felt like is I was running through every possible scenario I could be in. And then finally, like she was touching like my leg or something, like you're okay. And I was like, oh, okay.
And you were probably not out for that long.
I probably was not out.
By the way, with all these scary stories,
here we go.
NAD right now.
It's cold, I can feel it.
Yeah, you want to do NAD after this?
Whatever you put in that bag, we're not going to turn it down, Mike. We trust you with our lives. If I quit talking, then Danica's just gonna have to fill in the gaps because I'm high on NAD. So,
am I good to let this just like hang now?
We're starting right now?
We've started. Well, I've done methylene blue one time. It kind of hurt. Like when I got it, it was like achy.
You mean right now?
Like not right now, but when I got it, it was like it felt like it kind of ached around that area, and I ended up putting a warm pack on it. So I'm like, crossing my fingers that this won't be like that. It
probably wasn't the methylene blue. It was probably some kind of a vein or something, or possibly like sometimes you'll get like a little bit of an allergic response to something else that's in the IV. So methylene blue is pretty safe. So the idea is that methylene blue is something that some people might already know about if they follow some fitness people and biohackers and stuff on social media, because they get made fun of for having the so-called Smurf mouth.
Yeah,
you've been eating
methylene blue for a long time.
Stress is a common factor that affects everyone in today's fast-paced world,
leading to various issues. What if the answer to better stress response is in a key ingredient? I'm talking about magnesium. Actually, I'm specifically talking about Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. This one-of-a-kind product is designed to reverse low levels of magnesium, which could be leading to a multitude of health problems. What sets Magnesium Breakthrough apart is its ability to support healthy levels of stress hormones like cortisol, a better balanced stress response in your nervous and hormonal systems, and a healthy production of GABA, the relaxing neurotransmitter, leading to a more peaceful and better flow state. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. It's the only organic full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience and better sleep, all in one bottle. Simply go to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense using promo code PrettyIntense. There are always amazing gifts with purchase. Go now to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense to get your magnesium breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase.
After my last teeth cleaning at my fancy dentist here in Phoenix, I've switched. So now I have like a little dropper bottle and it goes at the back of the throat so it doesn't make the mouth all blue.
Okay.
The tip is if you use they call them troches. This is the most popular way people do methylene blue is they put a little troche in their mouth and it dissolves it and it can turn the mouth blue. Now there are some hacks around that not happening. I think it's quercetin. Dr. Mike Major, who hooked us up to these, would be able to verify, but I think it's quercetin, like the flavonoid that you can put in the troche that keeps it from dyeing the mouth as much. But then you can also swish with baking soda and it gets rid of it more quickly. But you're still gonna have like a little bit of blue on your lip and here and there in the teeth. But the idea and the reason why it seems to be surging in popularity is that it's this weird, like selective antioxidant, meaning it can donate electrons and it can take electrons. And one of the main areas that it causes benefit is in the mitochondria's ability to produce ATP.
Which is really important.
Yeah, which is like the energy
powerhouse
currency,
of the cell.
right? Yeah, adenosine triphosphate, like 3 phosphate groups, same reason people take creatine, right? Creatine phosphate for energy. ATP is also for energy, and your body makes it by shuttling electrons through this electron transport chain in the mitochondria. Methylene blue allows that to occur more efficiently. And what's cool is the mitochondria have these complexes. There's 4 different complexes. And one called the cytochrome complex, what it does is it will actually interact with photons of light, particularly light from the red light spectrum, and create more ATP once it interacts with light. Well, methylene blue specifically upregulates that process.
So does adding red light in help exacerbate it?
Well, I've done an IV like this before where the practitioner literally hung one of those little portable red light units to activate it before it was even going into the body.
Whoa.
But then the other thing you can do is once it's in your system, it's in your system. So if you and I, after this podcast, were to go walk in the sunshine, or actually I'm gonna go do an infrared sauna after this. Anything that's like red light or sunlight based paired with mitochondria is the most incredible clean energy ever. And then if you look at methylene blue, I mean, I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, but there were some practitioners using it as like a COVID treatment, as an antiviral agent, because it's similar to, I believe, hydroxychloroquine in terms of the way that it acts. It is antibacterial, it's antifungal. I had it injected into my prostate for fungus, and it literally just like nukes everything. This doctor down in Florida does literally like prostate injections with ozone and methylene blue. So it is like a broad spectrum energy enhancer and assists with the immune system. I would say the only thing to be cautious with is that, like, if we were doing this podcast at night, we would be up really late. Like I did methylene blue before bed once and I was up till like 4 a.m. So you get crazy good energy from it.
Is it from the ATP? Is it from?
There's a little bit of like a central nervous system stimulant effect. Not as harsh as like caffeine or something like that, but it definitely wakes you up, which is why a lot of people will do methylene blue in the morning, then go for a walk in the sunshine or do an infrared sauna, and you just feel incredible afterwards. It's interesting because if you look at colors and the way that colors interact with light in the human body, it's very similar to almost like being able to photosynthesize like a plant. What I mean by that is I talked about how methylene blue could help you make more ATP, but you're not eating calories, right? It's just a color that interacts with light. have you heard of Shilajit before? Like
Oh
that
yeah,
dark black
I've definitely
stuff?
taken plenty of
That'd
that.
be another example. The Russian conqueror of mountains, destroyer of weaknesses that tastes like crap. But
Oh, it's super
same
bitter.
thing.
A lot of those
Yeah,
adaptogens are really
yeah,
bitter.
it's really bitter. And then the photocyanins that you'd get from like chlorella, spirulina,
Yeah, also tastes like
blue-green
crap.
algae. I like it. I make a smoothie with it, and there's not a lot of it in there, but I think it tastes good. Like methylene blue, it's good marketing when you go to a juicery and they have like the bright blue juices.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, methylene blue, Shilajit, photocyanins from algae like chlorella or spirulina, that paired with sunlight or red light therapy is an amazing health and energy hack. And it's not hard to get your hands on any of that stuff.
No,
I mean,
no.
Sunlight's free.
Yeah.
And I would say the easiest to find of the three we were just talking about is probably like chlorella or spirulina or something like that.
That's at any
Yeah.
health food store in their health section.
Yeah.
So how often, the thing is about a lot of this stuff, I think about it and I'm like, oh, do it. But then is there a regimen that's needed for it to actually have a definite benefit? Meaning, do you need to do it every month? Do you need to do it every week? Do you need to,
Yeah.
and how long will this last? Like, how long will the benefit of this methylene blue treatment last after we do it?
There's no big human clinical trials on ideal methylene blue dosage and timing. The guy who wrote a book called, I believe it's called Magic Bullet, Dr. John Laurence in Florida, he has like a dosing protocol that he uses with his patients, and he's probably taken the deepest dive into literature that I know of, and he cycles it. He'll go like 4 to 5 days on methylene blue, and then a couple days off, and then back on it, and he'll use kind of like microdoses of it, and kind of similar to NAD, you can start a protocol like that with just getting a massive bolus of it, like we're doing right now via an IV,
Right.
and then you can just do like oral administration after that
yeah.
with a troche or with the liquid drops I use are called BioBlue, and then Dr. Major has a troche. I forget what it's called. It's like brain something, brain HQ. Dr. Mike, what's the name of your troche? Brain Fit. Yeah. That's the one that has the stuff in it that doesn't dye your teeth as much.
Oh,
But,
okay. So kind of a little bit of a loading dose, and then
exactly.
you
Yeah.
can micro essentially to kind of keep it up.
Yeah, because like with NAD, which we'll also get today, you can kind of fill up your levels and then keep them topped off with oral administration. So if someone wants to use NAD, you'd get like, what'd you do, like 4 or 5?
I did 5 in
IVs?
10 days.
Yeah, and that's
of
pretty
750.
typical. Yeah, over anywhere from 5 to 10 days, you'll do around 5 NAD IVs. Then after that, you could just use oral supplementation. And there's even patches now, which are really convenient because NAD is so good for things like radiation, DNA damage, sleep deprivation. I get those patches, and when I do a long haul plane flight, I wear it on the flight, and I feel way better when I get to where I'm going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Let's ask that. I'm just curious. I didn't even think about that. But what would be, like, I do a lot of traveling, a lot of flying, and
Yeah.
even more international with some of the Formula One stuff I'm doing. So is there like and I eat on flights. I don't drink alcohol, but I do eat meals. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'll also try and
Peanuts,
sleep.
lots of little bags of peanuts. Yeah.
Pretzels.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. But what's what are things to not do on a flight that's over a certain
Oh
amount of
man,
hours?
things to not do and things to do.
To
Like
do,
you're on the
exactly.
right track with not eating, and that's not just
No, I do
based
eat.
on
I
the
do
way.
eat, but I don't drink.
Okay, got it. Based on the way that the cabin pressures can affect digestion, you're always going to have kind of impaired digestion when you're eating on a flight. Now, don't get me wrong. If I'm on like a long haul flight, like I'm flying to London in a couple of months,
Right.
like I have friends who just will fast the entire time,
Yeah.
and they'll use ketones because ketones, like drinkable ketone esters, are fantastic, similar like NAD, to fighting inflammation, and they also quell hunger pretty significantly.
Yeah.
So you can be satiated, not have to eat the crappy airplane food, and get the side benefit of the anti-inflammatory part of the ketones. So ketones are great. Like I always do my morning workout fasted, and I usually use a couple of ketones. So there's all sorts of different ketones, and they have crazy names, but beta hydroxybutyrate and 1,3-butanediol are the most commonly found ketones. And 1,3-butanediol will elevate your ketone levels, not for a super long time, but it's kind of like a less expensive way to get your ketones up. And there's companies like, you've probably seen like HVMN, like Ketone IQ. That's 1,3-butanediol. It's a drinkable ketone. They figured out how to make it taste decent, and it will give you, like a good 4 to 5 hours of good energy without
Yeah.
eating a lot of other foods. And then you can take that same molecule that they're using, which is 1,3-butanediol, and some companies will bind that to another more powerful ketone called beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that's what I do pre-workout, is I'll take beta-hydroxybutyrate with 1,3-butanediol, and I have to almost like force myself to drink my smoothie before I go to work after that.
It feels like a pre-workout too?
Because you're just satiated forever.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's more expensive. Like the one that makes, there's one company called Delta G. There's another one called Ketone Aid. I like Ketone Aid because they use a natural sweetener. I think Delta G uses sucralose. But those are like more powerful versions of ketones. And any of those would be fantastic as an alternative to eating on the airplane. However, I typically, for a domestic flight, use that approach. Like I don't eat on a domestic flight, but international, it's like, I've got my nice napkin. They bring out and some of the food's kind of cool, and you get like a multi-course meal, and I'll even have like some of the champagne when you get in, and like, sometimes you got to party a little bit on the plane, but for the most part, especially for domestic flights, not eating much and having ketones is step one. Obviously, as most people know, water and water plus electrolytes is also really important just due to the dehydration. So I hammer the water. I usually have like LMNT, which is like an electrolyte powder.
This has got element in it. I don't know.
Really?
Oh yeah.
What'd
It's
you use?
not
Like
much.
the
It's
new
just,
LMNT Ghost Clear? I haven't seen it in there.
No, it's the watermelon flavor. It's just probably pretty diluted. I just sort of sporadically throw it in throughout the day. It's not throwing, for people that don't know, when they put in a whole packet of element into water, I was like, oh no, that's not good. Don't do the whole thing.
Watermelon, it's incredible. And they also have the citrus lime is really good in a margarita, a skinny margarita. Okay, so water and electrolytes and ketones. And then if you look at a lot of the radiation and inflammation that occurs when flying, the question becomes, okay, so I've got Wi-Fi signals bouncing around the cabin, all the people who didn't pay attention to put their phones in airplane mode. So you've got at least 20 people on the flight who have phones on, and the worst time to have a phone near your body is when it's searching for a signal. That's when it puts out the most radio frequency, right? So if you have 1 bar reception, it's a good idea to like use one of those radiation-proof cases or talk on speaker, or keep the phone away from your head and your brain. But just imagine, because I'll look around sometimes when I'm on a flight, and I kind of get pissed, but I don't want to say anything when I'm sitting next to somebody, and you can tell it's not in airplane mode. So I'm like, dang, it's searching for a signal the whole time. So the question becomes, what can you do to protect yourself from all of the radiation? The way to think about this is you've got DNA damage, and then you've also got a high amount of calcium influx into the cell that occurs when you're exposed to radiation. The DNA damage piece comes full circle back to NAD. It's one of the best ways to help your DNA to repair. NAD with something called sirtuins is like the turkeys and cranberries of DNA repair. So a sirtuin, you've probably heard of these before. This would be like resveratrol, would be the most commonly one talked about. One that's like 10 times more powerful than resveratrol is called pterostilbene, spelled with a P, like P-T-E-R-O, stilbene. Other like foods or food extracts have sirtuins in them. Usually they're like the dark reds, purples, blacks of the plant kingdoms, like black raspberries, blueberries, red wine, even like dark chocolate. Shilajit has some in there. So if you use some kind of sirtuin, and it could just be like your favorite antioxidant or resveratrol capsule or whatever, and NAD or dark chocolate. That's right. You gotta be careful with the sugar on the flight, but dark chocolate can come in handy.
80%. That should be good.
90. I'm 100. What's
like
the brand?
chalk.
Lindt, I think it is. Yeah. Baking chocolate. Less expensive too. So you do NAD plus sirtuins, and this could be before the flight, it could be during the flight, it could be after the flight. You could do like an NAD patch like I do, and then take some kind of an antioxidant along with it for the sirtuin piece. And so that solves the DNA damage part of things. And then the other part is the calcium influx. What do you do about these massive amounts of a positive ion like calcium rushing into the cell in response to radiation? The reason that's important is because you're a battery, where like all of your cells operate with a specific electrochemical gradient across the cell membrane, and it's supposed to be slightly negatively charged on the inside. So you have a constant influx of positive ions. I mean, technically, if you see someone in rigor mortis, that's a massive calcium influx that occurs into the muscles after the heart ceases to beat and someone passes. Well, just imagine the sympathetic nervous system stimulation and the big contraction that's occurring when you've got this massive calcium influx going on. So a lot of people will feel tight, stressed, if they track their HRV, it'll drop a little bit when they're around Wi-Fi routers, using the phone too much on an airplane. A lot of times it's the calcium influx. One of the best ways to combat that is with magnesium. So you can literally like take the same type of magnesium capsules you'd take before you go to bed at night, for example.
There's so many kinds of magnesium, though.
There are a lot. And a lot of them are helpful. Magnesium glycinate and magnesium threonate are two of the ones that help the most for what I'm talking about. But there's one company, you've probably heard of them, Bioptimizers. They one called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's like 7 different forms.
Sponsor my podcast.
Shotgun, there we go. Shout out. That was convenient. Checks in the mail. So Magnesium Breakthrough, that'd be an example of just getting all of them.
Because there's 7 different forms of magnesium
exactly.
in that.
Yeah, so they're all chelated to something different. Like you have a magnesium glycinate and a magnesium threonate and a magnesium taurate and one that makes you poop, the magnesium citrate. And so all of these are just magnesium bound to a certain salt. But taking that before, during, or after the flight, in addition to the NAD and sirtuins, is really helpful for that. So far, you've got ketones to stave off the appetite and fight inflammation. You've got NAD and sirtuins for the DNA damage and the inflammation. You've got water with electrolytes for the hydration. Then you've got magnesium for the calcium influx. This sounds like a lot, but this is like the pro tip for a long haul flight. I wouldn't do this if I was flying from Phoenix to Austin or something like that. But if you want to pull out the stops, these are the things that you do. And then a few other things that occur that a lot of people don't think about when flying. The nasal passages can get very dry. And when they get dry, you're more susceptible to infection. You can't produce as much nitric oxide. It can result in lower oxygenation. So having some kind of a little oil, like sesame oil, olive oil, lotion, anything like that you can put on the inside of the nostrils can help with the drying out of the airways. And that's very simple to pull off and just have in your purse or your carry-on. The next thing is that similar to the calcium influx that occurs when you're exposed to radiation, you don't experience an influx of what are called negative ions when you're flying 40,000 feet above the surface of the planet in a metal tube. Have you heard of grounding or earthing before?
I literally, at home, if I do Zoom meetings or podcasts, I have a grounding mat that's underneath my feet the whole time I'm doing it. I used to sleep with grounding sheets that you'd plug into the ground, into the outlet, and then just generally getting your feet in grass and sand.
Grass, sand, a body of water is the most powerful way to ground. Every time solar radiation or lightning strikes the surface of the planet basically absorbs that electricity in the form of negative ions. Every time your body touches the surface of the planet, you absorb those negative ions in addition to the low-level radiation that the Earth naturally produces. The Earth produces a hertz frequency of about 0 to 100 hertz, like nowhere near like the gigahertz that a router or a smart appliance might be producing. But that's like a low level of radiation that's anti-inflammatory, combined with the influx of negative ions that help, with the depolarization that occurs when you're flying, when you're exposed to a lot of the electrical soup we all live in, et cetera. So when the plane lands, you can actually figure out a way to go outside and get your body in touch with the surface of the planet. This could be like checking into your hotel room and going for a walk. This is what I do, and stopping and doing some push-ups in certain places on your walk, so you're getting your hands in touch with the ground. If you don't want to walk bare feet because of needles or glass or whatever, you can wear grounding shoes. There are companies like Earth Runners or Plugs, or even these straps you can get on Amazon. You've wore these sandal shoes
for a long time.
Yeah, those Earth Runners, like the Tamamahara Jesus sandals. And depending on like where you got to go.
Sort of like Tevas, but not quite.
Depending where you got to go and what kind of fashion you need. Let's say you want to be grounded, but you got to go to like a cocktail party. Like they do make shoes that are not like hippie, dirty hippie shoes.
Okay.
So they make them. So figuring out a way to get in touch with the surface of the planet makes you feel way better when you get to where you're going. And then one other thing to think about, and this is becoming more common, is the idea of wearing clothing that helps to shield you from
Sure,
radiation.
EMF
Yeah, from EMF
blocking
and
clothes.
from solar radiation, if the window's open on the airplane or whatever. So yeah, they make EMF blocking clothes now.
Yep.
There's a company like Lambs that make underwear and hats.
Yep.
There's
some of it.
one company, they're very small, not a lot of people know about them, but they're called No Choice. And I have one of these and I wear it for an international flight. It's like a full-on tracksuit lined with silver fabric that protects you from all the EMF. It's got like a hoodie that pulls down over your head. And I feel way better now when I wear that for an international flight. It doesn't breathe very well. That's the only thing I don't like about it. And security, like TSA, will freak out if you wear it through the scanner because you're a ghost. Like they can't see you. And so then you gotta like go into the special room and get searched and patted down. So I put it in my backpack, like my carry-on, the tracksuit, and then I go through security and then I just pull it on over whatever.
Do you opt out of the hands up metal detector thing?
Well, I usually don't have to do it because I fly TSA or clear, but I don't opt out of it. You're getting way more radiation from the flight itself than you are from
walking through that.
And it's like
That's good.
the hassle that you have to go through if you bypass that.
Oh, and they hate you for it.
I think
they make you wait forever. They're
that
like,
stress is worse for you than getting exposed to the radiation, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh wow, our methylene blue is almost in.
It's a little achy.
Yeah.
My arm's a little achy.
I
Is
think
your
it's
arm a little
the
achy?
temperature. It's like a little bit cold. Yeah.
Is that what it is? It's fine, but I'm feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, you can feel it going in.
I feel like I want someone to hug me.
So there's this concept of Zeitgebers. That's
What's that?
It's a German word, means timekeepers.
Oh, okay.
So timekeepers are things that help your circadian rhythm adjust to a new time zone, or things that allow you to have a normal sleep cycle and wake cycle, like sleep drive and wake drive. So the best Zeitgebers to think about if you fly a lot, one is food. Do you do like intermittent fasting, skip breakfast,
Nope.
wait after workout?
I hate doing that.
Okay,
I tried it for a long time. I just would say that I eat every like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
I don't really snack much, so I just kind of eat square meals.
But you don't like get up at 2 a.m. to eat for 4 hours.
No. And usually when it comes to traveling and food, I usually just try and eat when I have the best food available.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, and like trying to get it around, like let's say I'm flying to Singapore, which I did last year, like get on the plane, eat the meal, go to bed.
Yeah.
And then I slept for 12 hours.
Yeah. That's a good strategy, particularly for international travel. The idea of the food thing though is that people who are breakfast skippers, who are like, I'm hitting my compressed feeding window, bro, I'm not going to eat till 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., don't do that if you're traveling across multiple time zones, because food is a very powerful cue to align you to a new time zone. So if you land in, let's say, Singapore at 2 a.m., don't eat. Wait until like whatever the appropriate breakfast time is where you're traveling to, like 8 or 9 a.m., and then have yourself a nice breakfast. And if the breakfast has 30 to 40 grams of protein, that increases its power as a Zeitgeber. So that's number one, is eat on a regular cycle based on where some people who
where you're going,
like get super into this, they'll like 3 days ahead of time start to eat in that time zone. And I'm not that extreme, and I don't want to get up at midnight to have my Singaporean breakfast. So food is one. Exercise is another. Like movement that occurs in the morning when it's wake time in whatever area of the world you happen to be in. That helps align circadian rhythms. Temperature is another. Anything cold, particularly in the morning, increases the cortisol awakening response and starts to diminish sleep drive. So it helps with jet lag as well. So we've got food, exercise, and temperature. And then one of the most powerful is light, right? And this is something that it gets talked about a lot now, right? Like get lots of natural blue light during the day. Get out in the sunlight, wear blue light blocking glasses at night. Don't look at your screen an hour before bedtime. Like there's all this advice out there, and it's good, but relevant to the travel piece, it's really interesting how you can play with this stuff. Like for example, your flight lands, again, let's say at like 2 a.m. You're gonna put on blue light blocking glasses. You're gonna avoid looking at screens or dim screens. When you get into your hotel room, if you're like me, I travel with like a little red light headlamp to get around, so everything's just like real nice and dark, like a cave, or slightly red. And then as soon as morning arrives in whatever time zone that you happen to be in, or as soon as the time arrives when you want to send your body a message that it's morning, you blast yourself with as much light as possible, like sunlight. Put the screen on your phone on full blast. Look at computer monitors. Don't wear blue light blocking glasses. Just get bathed in light, and that is super effective at shifting your body into a new time zone. So effective, in fact, that these seasonal affective disorder boxes that you can get, have you seen these before? They like produce a bright light. People in like, you probably don't have them in Phoenix, but in like Seattle or Portland, where it's dark and gray, they'll put these on their desks to combat depression, but they're producing massive amounts of like bluish green, high flicker wavelength of light that helps to induce massive amounts of wakefulness. So let's say you've been traveling and you're going east to west, and you've been on the East Coast for like a week. You come back to the West Coast, and you're waking up like way too early on the West Coast, right? Because it's like you're like it's, like the 4 a.m. for you is 7 a.m. on the East Coast, and so that's the time you've been telling your body for the past week to go. So what you would do is just like not get exposed to as much light as you can not get exposed to all the way up until 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whenever it is that you want to start waking up again. Then you get one of these like seasonal affective disorder boxes and put it on your desk and flip it on. There's even glasses that you can travel with. Was one set called the IO, AYO. There's one called the Retimer, and these literally are like a blue light box glass for your head that just blasts you with light. And light is probably the most powerful of all the different Zeitgeibers that I just mentioned. So, yeah. We got IV change up. All right,
round two.
Dr. Major with the cameo.
How's it feeling?
I had methylene blue one other time. It was a lot worse last time.
Okay.
This is tolerable.
Pain out of 10, what would you give it?
Pain out of 10 is like a 3.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just like, I always feel a little bit, but I think it's just like the pressure from the needle.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you do move the arm, sometimes that helps.
Yeah. All right, we'll start arm wrestling. Is that appropriate with the needles?
What are we doing here now? Is this
Yeah.
NAD?
So this is the NAD.
Show
Okay,
and
God,
tell.
be gentle. How much you can give me?
100 milligrams.
Okay, great.
No,
I was
that's not
glad.
bad.
When you said 200, I'm like, 750 took me 3 hours, so
I'm actually going to start it kind of fast. And when you feel it, let me know and I'll shut it off.
No, start it slow.
Okay, well, to just get the right
It's pretty
level.
diluted.
Okay.
If she starts to pass out, I'm pretty fast in the draw, and I can turn down the drip rate too.
So
Just like give me a signal,
Okay.
like fall off your chair.
Well, don't worry. I'll be
land
watching
flat
to
on the
see when the
floor.
blue is done.
Yeah.
It'll be like a mental countdown in my head of like, dun, dun, dun. Here it
did you say you
comes.
did like 400 last time?
Well, I think I got 750 each time I did it.
Oh,
Those
But
were
it
3
was
hours.
really slow. Like I said, it took many hours. So we'll just
You know what the pro tip is for that? Because one of the reasons that it feels kind of weird when it speeds up is you're speeding up methylation, right? So you're exhausting methyl groups more quickly. Anything that is like a supplement that has a lot of methyl groups in it, like one would be trimethylglycine or TMG or SAMe. Another one that works really well though is just like the little liver capsules, because those have a lot of methylated groups in them. And if you take them before an NAD IV, you don't feel as blah during the IV. So,
I also get a little congested with NAD.
yeah.
Like there's a little bit of a, what's the right word? Histamine, a histamine reaction. I'm like, ha, 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 ha.
Boop, boop, boop.
so
It's
here's
going
this-
in.
Here's this 200. If you
Okay.
feel like it's just too weak, you can let me know and I can put more in.
Okay.
You gave him 200 and you gave me 100. He said he can take 1,000 in 11 minutes.
Put as much as you want in there, and
He's
then
not able to
Danica
talk,
can just
that's
trash
it.
talk.
You want more in?
Yeah. We can just roll with this. It's good. Yeah. I'll be all right.
Okay, amazing. I'll let you know well, you'll see if I pass
How
out,
easy is it
but-
to put more in?
I'll just go grab it. I'll put 400 in. You want 400?
Oh, heck, let's do it.
Okay.
The only thing that could go wrong is Danica has to start talking a lot more. All right, cool, man.
Let me grab it.
Has
Thanks.
anybody ever pooped their pants on your podcast before? This could be a first. NAD can cause a little bit of gut distress.
Oh,
We'll find
really?
out. So.
Great. All right.
So yeah, I mean, you asked me about the flight, and
Yeah.
and like beyond the flight, those are some of the things that you could even pull out as tricks for jet lag. If you do travel across time zones a lot. But those are some of the things I would do.
Okay. very detailed and helpful for so many people. I'm sure lots of people travel. I'm curious about EMFs. It's like one of the things that I'm crazy about. I have EMF reducers in my house. I even signed up for a service for my phone called FLFE. It's like Focused Life Force Energy.
Yeah, they're blasting with invisible
Like
quantum particles from afar.
And I'm cool with
Yeah.
it. You know, it might
Yeah.
not be working, it might be working.
Yeah.
But I started doing that like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I have a Safe Sleep EMF reducing case. I took Wi-Fi booster out of my bedroom. You know, I have all kinds of things. Is that a Quantum Lila?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Because
this
those
one
are-
is like a little cylinder with tiny little
Balls.
beads in it
Yeah.
that you can take out. If I had an extra arm, but mine is occupied. And they say that these beads are blasted with healing frequencies by special healers who they have on their team or have access to, and then they package them up in this cylinder and you wear it. And supposedly it protects you against EMFs and blasts you with
Exactly.
positive frequencies. And then this one is made by a company called Eras Tech, and what they claim to do is to harmonize the frequency that you might be exposed to from a phone or a Wi-Fi router or something like that, to transform it into a signal that's less damaging to the body. So the question is this all woo, and are we spending way too much money on ineffective devices? First of all, if you look at a lot of the EMF protection devices out there, they all have pretty good data on things like increased ATP production when ATP drops low because you've been around smart appliances and Wi-Fi routers and cell phones all day long. They will show decrease what they call red blood cell clumping, where you'll do like a live red blood cell analysis and look at the blood and you see less clumping. They'll look at things like stress measurements, particularly HRV, and say, well, people got an increase in HRV when they were exposed to or around our devices. That could all be the case. However, none of these studies included a control, right? Where you wear a pretty necklace, but it's actually not got in it what they say they have in it.
Right.
So the question then becomes, how much of this is placebo effect, right? Like how much of what we're experiencing when
Sure.
we use one of these things that protect us is just us knowing we're using the thing that protects us so we feel better.
Yeah.
If you feel better, you feel better, and that's fine.
And it's working.
And the only damage is to your pocketbook. There are other things you can do that might not be as woo from a quantum physics standpoint, right? Like this thing that you're blasting yourself
Phone
with,
to,
the
yeah.
FLF. There's no one called quantum upgrade. It's all based on the same reason that people might pray over their food or say, hey, I'm sending positive thoughts your way.
Right.
Right, this is all based on quantum physics, invisible,
energy,
photonic energy.
a
And
web of connectedness
yeah.
to everything.
I pray over my food.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm grateful to God. I also know that taking a moment before you eat is something that can improve digestion, help you to be more grateful for something that you're eating, help you eat more slowly, feel fuller faster. Like there's a lot going on when you just sit down and do something positive before you dive in. But there's really very, very little to none when it comes to demonstrable good science on whether this whole quantum energy thing or using things to block energy, produce energy actually work. There is one device I know of that has demonstrated an actual reduction in the field strength of the devices and the routers themselves. Unfortunately, their technology, it's like a liquid technology, and you can't wear it on a device. It'd be too heavy. I mean, the device is like the smallest device they have is like the diameter of this cup plus maybe 3 times as tall, and then they have
Okay.
some bigger like cylindrical
Flat
devices
cylinders.
that cover a home or an
Oh,
office.
yeah. Does it look
That
like a
one's-
copper coil almost?
Yeah, that one's called the Waveguard.
Okay.
Turn this down just slightly. Before
I could
Mike
see
knocks
it
me
kick
out.
in for you.
Yeah,
I saw it.
yeah.
It was about
When you did that
it was
second
about
one,
20 seconds ago.
Did my face change?
Yeah.
So the Waveguard is a company that has one that can reduce the field strength. And I just had an interview with them on my podcast like 3 weeks ago where we were talking about some of the studies.
Yeah.
So that's one that I can say seems to work as far as actual third-party studies with a good control. But we might be getting ahead of ourselves because it's like, well, you could protect your body, but why not do things in your environment to reduce the field strength altogether? So you're just not getting blasted as much.
Like,
Well, the first thing is we are never going to like be like pristine monks, living on a Himalayan mountaintop or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to go move in with the Amish or be a total Luddite or
Right.
throw out my phone or get one of those dumb phones.
Yeah, most
the
everyone
flip
wants to be
phones.
in the world.
Right, yeah. And so the question is, what can you do to reduce the damage? So there is one time of your life when your nervous system has a chance to repair and recover from all those things I was talking about earlier, right? Like calcium influx and DNA damage and lack of negative ions. And when do you think that time would be?
While you sleep.
When you sleep, right? So number one thing to do is go into your bedroom, right? Like if you're listening or watching right now, go into your bedroom and just look at it and ask yourself, what is producing electricity in here that might not need to be because I'm asleep?
Are we even talking
Right.
about stuff plugged into the wall, like a
So-
a lamp?
Every little bit adds up. It's more the things that are producing a signal, right?
Right.
So
Wi-Fi.
it's like my smart TV, right? Wi-Fi signal that cannot be disabled. Not a really important reason to have that in the bedroom. If you want to watch something in your bedroom, stream it on your laptop at the foot of the bed or something, because entertainment shouldn't be a major focus of the bedroom anyways when it comes to prioritizing sleep. And particularly the electrical component of a lot of entertainment devices is something that you'd ideally have in like a living room or a den or somewhere where you're not trying to give your body a chance to repair and recover. The next thing would be a lot of like bedside devices, humidifiers.
Or how about
frequency
wearables?
Devices. Yeah, wearables. We'll get to that in a second. But if it doesn't have to be on during the night of sleep, then don't have it on. And if it does have to be on, like we were talking about grounding and earthing, and I have this mat that I sleep on that's like grounding and earthing on steroids. It uses a signal called pulsed electromagnetic field frequency. And these are really great for inflammation. It's kind of like all the benefits that being in touch with the planet gives you, but they're more concentrated at a higher intensity. However, that has to be plugged in. So for anything that needs to be plugged in, I have what's called a dirty electricity filter. This is something that you plug into the outlet of whatever it is that, every outlet or multiple outlets in a room, they are basically connected to one circuit or to one breaker. And so however many outlets are in the room that are being fed by that circuit, that's how many dirty electricity filters you'd want to have in there. Or you could just play it safe and plug them into all the outlets in the bedroom. What they do is they reduce the amount of AC power surges that occur throughout the house, because that's the main issue. Every time something gets turned on, turned off, something runs, somebody's turning on something downstairs, the dryer goes on, the washer, there's all these AC power surges, and you get exposed to those. Whether or not you're touching a wall or touching a cable or touching an appliance, you're still getting the frequency that's emanating from, for example, the wiring in the home. So, or the device that's plugged into the outlet. So if you have things plugged in during the night of sleep, if you can get these dirty electricity filters and plug those into the outlet and then plug the device in, you can do that throughout the whole house if you want to.
Yeah.
But the bedroom is the most important. There are brands like Greenwave or Stetzer Filter, like those are two brands, and those are both companies that make dirty electricity filters. So the next thing in the bedroom would be, trying to think, you talked about grounding and earthing sheets, I talked about PEMF, dirty electricity filters.
What about sex?
Probably, it depends on how high EMF your sex is. I mean, there's some pretty intense vibrators out there that probably aren't doing you any favors, but it depends on the length of time that they're operating. So sex is a relatively low EMF activity though.
I'm just wondering about the positive benefits
Yeah,
of it.
I'm sure there are positive benefits of sex that protect you from radio frequencies, and someone should do a study
I know,
on
I'm
that.
off topic.
Someone should do a study on
that.
that.
It's not an EMF topic.
Yeah, and you probably wouldn't want to be in the control group, the non-sex control group. But anyways, the last thing in the bedroom is the Wi-Fi, right? Because even if it's in another room of the house, the Wi-Fi still produces a signal that you're feeling. Now, the intensity of that signal diminishes exponentially based on your distance from the Wi-Fi.
Sure.
So you don't have to freak out if you live in an apartment complex and you flip on your phone or your computer and you can see all these different Wi-Fi signals. You're somewhat far from those. It's still a problem, but you're not super close to them. Your room or the areas directly adjacent to your room is where you should consider, especially when you're sleeping, does the Wi-Fi need to be on?
Right.
Like you can literally, if you forget about it, just get a digital wall timer and plug it into the outlet that your Wi-Fi router is plugged into, and a digital wall timer lets you say, okay, I want this outlet to operate between like 6 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night, but I don't want it to operate 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. when I'm asleep. And then you can just set it and forget it, and it'll automatically lower the signal. So bedroom is the most important place. And then, throughout the rest of the house and with your wearables and your devices, it's just being picky about how much you're exposed to. Like if your phone doesn't need to have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on, or if it can be in airplane mode, have it. In my office, I have an Ethernet cable I have the iPhone 15, and I've got a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, so I can just plug my phone in and have it hardwired rather than having the phone on next to me while I'm working during the day.
Oh, wow.
Same thing, I've got an Ethernet cable going from my computer to the router, so I don't have to have the Wi-Fi router on in my office because it's just running via like this Cat7 metal shielded Ethernet cable. So you get way less EMF when you're wired instead of wireless.
What do you think about the wearables, though? There's so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like Apple Watches, so many people wear those things.
Yep.
I mean, people wear a Whoop or various different,
computers on your wrist. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're sleeping in them most of the time, too, because it's also giving sleep data at times. Like, that's part of the role of wearables. But is this really is it really bad? And then earbuds, like Bluetooth earbuds versus...
It's not as bad as the bigger, like smart appliances, Wi-Fi routers, etc. But the way to think about it is this. In an era of smart homes and smart appliances, and your refrigerator knows when you've run out of milk and it'll make an order from Amazon or whatever, all of that typically requires a wireless signal. So, for example, I'm building a home in Idaho right now, and when I'm choosing appliances, I am wanting to select appliances that, for example, don't have Wi-Fi, aren't advertised as like a smart refrigerator.
Yeah.
A lot of the modern air filters, refrigerators, dryers, washers, a lot of these, for some reason, they come with Wi-Fi and they come with Wi-Fi enabled, but most of them also have a function where you can just go in and disable it if you're not using it. The same thing could be said for the wearables, right? Like I have wearables that produce Bluetooth, and even like the Apple Watch has a Wi-Fi signal. You can just put it in airplane mode, right? So you put stuff in airplane mode, and then when you want to upload your data to the cloud or sync it or whatever, then you take it out of airplane mode, then you put it back in airplane mode. So for a wearable, the only metric I have, if it does produce Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, is can I turn it off? Because then I've got my say over when I want to be exposed. And then the last thing to think about when it comes to your question about like the Bluetooth is a very like low intensity signal, especially like a class 3 Bluetooth signal, which a lot of these earbuds and stuff are using. It's not that big of a deal, but long-term exposure, and this is like some kind of sketchy studies, this is almost close to like the red blood cell clumping studies I was talking about with the personal protective devices. Like there might be some issues, but there's not like bodies in the streets when it comes to Bluetooth. So I typically wear the old school wired headphones. I don't use the Bluetooth a lot unless I really need to go wire free.
Or like if you're working out and you're trying to like move
when
around.
When you're working out, or like I have these super intense gnarly foam rolling sessions where the foam roller always kind of like sucks up the wire, and so I'll use my Bluetooth for that, but I would say like 10% of the time I'll use Bluetooth. Because if I can be wired, it's the same metric as with a computer. If you can be wired, wired.
Right.
And yeah, it's a little less convenient.
There are people that walk around
it's not
with
as
Bluetooth.
Sleek.
There are people that walk around wearing them all day.
Yeah, they do. And the benefit of wearing the wired headphones is when you are wearing them and listening to something, someone's less likely to come up and bother you because they're way more visible.
That's so true.
So yeah, it's just about selecting certain things that might be, yes, convenient, but in the long run could cause long-term health issues. So it's
so it's important to do something though.
Yeah.
This is like a call to action to do something. Most importantly, the bedroom, and then just try and be cognizant of being able to turn things on and off the rest of the time.
And then the only thing I'd throw in there would be your head and your brain. Like if you look at the small print on most smartphones, they tell you not to hold it a certain number of inches up next to your head.
Right, when it's
because
glued there.
of the warming and the radio frequency. So if you are using a device, try to keep it away from the head as much as possible. Talk on speaker, talk with your headphones. And I'm super concerned about like the VR headsets, the Apple Vision Pro, because you're basically getting massive amounts of blue light, which I talked about earlier.
Oh,
so
God,
circadian rhythm
Think about it,
disruption,
people doing this stuff at night.
plus the frequencies right next to the head, and kids who have rapidly dividing cells and thinner skulls, using these things. That's what I'm probably most concerned about right now. It's just like the massive headsets. That
Sure, and they'll be the
produce
ones
a lot
most
of
likely
radio
to want to use
frequencies.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
For a moment here, okay, we're getting NAD. Did we talk about NAD much?
talk
exactly
briefly
about
about
what-
it, but
let's,
basically,
give an overview here.
So
How are you feeling, by the way?
I'm feeling pretty
Little
good.
bit
I'm going
better?
to jack it up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's see. It's either yours or mine that I'm jacking up. The cables are twisted. So
It's yours because I've got my adjuster close
Yeah.
by.
So the reason, if folks are watching and haven't done NAD before, that you'll kind of adjust the drip rate is because NAD can be very stimulating and can also cause you to burn through what are called your methyl groups more quickly. So right there, I just turned it up, and within like a minute or so,
Oh, yeah.
I felt like slightly lightheaded. So anyways, the cool thing about NAD is that it is one of, like I was talking about when we were discussing jet lag and airline travel, one of the best ways to give your body what it needs to repair DNA. And there are a whole bunch of different forms of it, like NR and NMN, and there's NAD,
Right,
and
right.
a precursor is
NAC?
niacinamide.
Is that NAC?
NAC is different. NAC
it's
is
different? Okay.
N-acetylcysteine. That's like a liver cleanse detox type of thing.
Okay.
Fall into the same categories like glutathione. But all of these are very popular now as like these longevity enhancing supplements that can kind of hold back aging due to their ability to stave off one of the components of aging, which is DNA damage. Especially when, like we were talking about earlier, you combine it with some of these like, blues, reds, purples,
Yeah.
et cetera, the plant kingdom. Like NAD plus these sirtuins, it's a match made in heaven for cell repair, for DNA repair.
Does this include like senescent cells, or does that add that layer in of getting rid of sort of like garbage cells that are not acting
much
properly?
Of what you're referring to as a senolytic, and there are senolytics out there. Like I mentioned, quercetin earlier, which is in that methylene blue troche. That would be a senolytic agent. A fisetin, which you would find in like wild strawberries or as a supplement. That's a senolytic agent.
Okay.
Senescent cells, or so-called zombie cells, are cells that accumulate with age and basically churn out inflammatory byproducts as they build up in the body. It's just part of the aging process. Interestingly, it's also part of like the growing and the anabolic process. So if you have like a kid, don't give them a senolytic agent because you're going to kind of stave off some of like the natural puberty and growth that's supposed to occur. But I would say if you're above about the age of 40 or so, like you start to see significant senescent cell accumulation. And these senolytic supplements, like there's even one called Senolite, I think made by Qualia, or typically a diet that's rich in bitters and wild plants and herbs and spices. Like you're getting a decent amount of Senolites from something like that.
Okay.
But NAD, it's not the most powerful of senolytic agents, but it's more like the repair of the damage that occurs.
Oh, it repairs it. It doesn't get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. It'll
Okay.
repair damage. And
Okay.
the thing is, it's confusing to people because there's all sorts of different forms of NAD, right? You could get like an NAD IV, or you could take an NR supplement, or NMN, or niacinamide, which is dirt cheap but doesn't stick around the body for very long. I personally think that the best way to do it is with NAD, because you're just like going straight into the cell, whereas NR and NMN need to be digested. And there's even some evidence that like high dose NR in particular might be an issue. There was a recent study on cancer. There was another one on forgetting what it was. I think it might have been. No, there was one on niacin for heart disease. But NAD is, I think, the better of the choices out there in terms of bioavailability, especially if you can do like a patch or an IV like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then supplement orally after you've done like a patch or an IV. So the other cool part about NAD, this is the sleep deprivation stack. This is what you do if you're sleep deprived. There's two things that have clinical research behind them for combating the cognitive effects of sleep deprivation, and one's NAD, and then you combine that with creatine. Now, creatine is usually used for strength, power,
Sure.
muscle
I take
mass,
it every
etc.
day.
Yeah, and you probably take like 5 grams.
I take 5
or so.
grams
Yeah,
every day.
5 grams daily. That's like the gold standard. Creatine monohydrate, daily dosing for strength, for
Would
power.
you recommend
for
everybody
workouts.
does that?
Yeah. So, I mean, if
There's
you're,
no
if
reason
you're-
not to.
if you're vegan or plant-based, all the more. Like you get some creatine from meat, so you could argue it's less important if you're omnivorous, but everybody benefits from creatine. And it's
Right.
dirt cheap and it's well studied.
Because there's cognitive
Yeah.
benefits as well,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
Like-
You don't want to like mix it and walk away and leave it and drink it later because it'll degrade into creatinine.
Oh.
So if you like make a smoothie that has creatine in it, like drink it because creatinine can be a little bit stressful on the kidneys.
Okay.
So you'd want to consume your creatine after you mix it. If you're mixing
Got
it
it.
in water or smoothie.
So
But-
like a liposomal form of creatine that's already sort of pre-mixed, is that bad?
I wouldn't buy like an energy drink that has creatine in it.
Got it.
I don't know about a liposomal. I don't know
Okay.
of a liposomal creatine.
Like I got some packets from Symbiotica,
Yeah.
and it has creatine.
They have
in it,
creatine?
and something
Yeah.
else, but it's already liquefied.
It would depend on whether they've protected it with the lipid layer or
Okay.
if it's
Probably.
being exposed to the water part
Okay.
of the liquid. If it's being exposed to water that's hydrophilic, not lipophilic, that would break down the creatine into creatinine. And I don't know how they've formulated that. So we could ask them, call them up and ask them.
I will.
So with
Charvine,
creatine though,
hello.
for sleep deprivation, 10 to 20 milligrams is like the magic dose if you're just like beat up and sleep deprived and you want to take that plus NAD. The problem
10 to
is
20
that-
grams of
10 to
creatine?
20 grams, yeah. I might have said milligrams, but it's grams. So the problem is that like once you get past 5 grams, it can cause gut upset. So you'd want to do like, let's say you're sleep deprived, you've only slept 4 hours, you got to get through the day, you want to go work out. You'd just take 4 doses of 5 grams of creatine that day, and it's incredible for sleep deprivation. And then I was looking at a study this morning, and there's actually a third thing that kind of surprised me. It seems a little paradoxical, that also combats the effects of sleep deprivation.
Caffeine.
The
I'm just
cognitive.
kidding.
Caffeine, modafinil, energy
And
drinks.
modafinil, exactly.
Yeah, it's actually brief bouts of high intensity exercise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to exercise and you're sleep deprived, and you're supposed to go to a gym for an hour and you just can't get the oomph to go do it, just like do 4 15-minute like quick cardio sessions,
Yeah.
spread throughout the day, and it actually really helps with sleep deprivation. I don't know if that's the blood flow or something else, but yeah.
You mentioned modafinil. What do you think about modafinil? It's like sort of touted as like the healthy
yeah.
version of Adderall.
Yeah, so it is it's very powerful. It's an off-label drug when used for cognition because it'd be normally prescribed for narcolepsy. It's an anti-narcoleptic agent, meaning people who have a disorder that causes them to fall asleep during the day can get a modafinil prescription
This
to
will
keep
help.
them from falling asleep. So the we're gonna try this again. Let's see.
Going up?
Yep, going up a little bit. So the just a touch. The issue with modafinil is it causes a massive flood of dopamine into the area between the cells, and so the first thing is that if you use it, you start to get a little bit desensitized to dopamine, and it turns you into like a highly productive. I would describe it as like a highly productive robot asshole, right? Like you're just like, get out of my way. I'm getting everything done today. I'm checking everything off. I only slept 2 hours last night, but I don't care. I'm doing this anyway. And it's this weird energy because even if you want to go to sleep, you can't quite fall asleep. Like if you take a normal, it's anywhere from 100 to 200 mgs of modafinil.
Yeah, I think
like,
what do they recommend? 100 to 200.
Most tablets
is.
are like 100, and obviously you could chop that up in a pill splitter and just use baby amounts or microdose with it. But the problem with it also is it sticks around your system for a while. It can disrupt sleep cycles. Most people who take modafinil, they start to wake up at like 3 or 4 a.m. every single day, and then they have to totally reboot their circadian rhythm and use melatonin and do all that light food, cold exercise, Zeitgeber stuff, and just pull out all these stops
Keep adding layers
to reset
in.
their sleep cycles. There are things that can give you a good, clean, like 6 to 10-ish hours of energy that aren't going to give you like that 24-hour cycle, hard to come off, dopamine desensitization type of effect that modafinil would. These would be like done-for-you nootropic blends. There's one company called Newtopia You go to their website, you fill out a quiz, they send you like a little black box that's got something for energy and workout, something for sleep deprivation, something for focus, for word recall, for creativity, for verbal fluency. So that company does a good job. There's another one that's kind of a newer company, and they're even using like microdoses of psilocybin in their products, which is interesting because you can take like the focus drive of a traditional nootropic agent and then throw in the creativity aspect of something like psilocybin. I have some of these
microdose, it's like psilocybin plus adaptogens.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
They work really well. Awesome. Yeah, they work really well. And Wukio is a company that I found a couple of months ago, and they've got this one pill called Apex, and it's like 10 to 12 hours modafinil-esque, but I would say you feel cleaner, you still have a personality, you still have creativity, and you can sleep the night after you take it. So the other thing about modafinil is I think it is helpful if you do travel a lot internationally to have a stash on hand, because
just to kind of pull you into whatever zone you're in.
Depending on what you have to do. Like if you're an athlete,
using it acutely, like having it as a tool.
Yeah, or a performer, or like for me, if I need to fly to Tokyo and I get into the airport at let's say like 5 a.m. and I've got to be on stage giving a talk or doing a session at like 8 a.m. and then at a conference all day and then a post-conference party, I will use a full 200 mgs of modafinil, and just that's for that one day to just blast through that day and get past the jet lag. And then you have to take a bunch of melatonin at night to sleep, so you still got to kind of knock yourself out. But modafinil would be like few and far between. There's a use case for it. It is incredibly powerful. But just like anything in life, there's no biological free pass, right? If you hit that cheat code, you're gonna have some issues with dopamine desensitization. There's a whole book about this called Dopamine Nation, how if you're triggered by all these things that cause a constant flood of dopamine, everything like sex, food, exercise, entertainment, anything that would normally feel good, you need more of to make it feel good, or you need a more intense version of it, or you got to eat more food and you need candy and you got to like doom scroll through your phone even more. So you do want to be careful of anything that's just constant dopamine
tapping that
stimulation.
dopamine. Yeah. Let's talk about another like controversial one, the trizepatide, semaglutide.
Oh, the GLP-1.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I think it's like a giant human experiment right now. Because if you look at people who use it, it is kind of like modafinil, like works as advertised. I mean, one of my friends who's a foodie, he started onto Ozempic, and I went out to dinner with him at a really cool restaurant where, you know, like order family style, all the different things in the appetizers, and, you know, grass-fed steak, and cool entrees, and he had like half of a deviled egg, and he was like nauseous. And I know him, and all of his favorite foods were getting ordered to the table, and he just wouldn't eat because he wasn't hungry. And he wasn't just not hungry, he was like nauseous just by looking at it. So as you can imagine, if you had something like that in your system and you weren't eating, it would be incredible if you're like morbidly obese or overweight and you need to shed a lot of weight and you just don't have a way to you know, turn down the beast, and you know you'll eat everything in sight.
So possibly acutely it could work.
Acutely,
for
you also,
a certain span of time. For some people.
But you know, you get heartburn and pancreatitis and, you know, depression, anxiety. There's all these side effects with these agonists, and there's just not been a really good long-term, large-scale human clinical trial.
They've been around for a long time, though.
Yeah.
I mean, these are diabetic medications that have been around for a long time, right?
But in the general population, people who don't have diabetes, people who aren't morbidly obese, just using them to like shed a few pounds and, you know, get ready for beach day, I think it's problematic. I especially think it's problematic considering that there are safer, cleaner alternatives to do what you're trying to do with that.
Because essentially they're just making you eat less.
Yeah, GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide. Glucagon-like peptide is a hormone that helps you, well, it's peptide technically, it helps to cause the release of the hormone. It would be leptin, and it would decrease ghrelin. So ghrelin is the one that makes you feel hungry, leptin is the one that makes you feel satiated. So it would cause an effect on the hormones to make you feel fuller faster or not be hungry. But there are other things that do that. For example, hops extract, like that you use to make a beer. It has a similar effect. There's one supplement
Yerba
called
mate?
Calocurb that actually does that, and it's incredibly effective. I've been experimenting with a lot of these because I get so many questions about GLP-1.
Yeah, I bet.
So Calocurb is one. There are specific probiotic strains that also do the same thing, quell hunger but don't have the side effects. Akkermansia is one example. And there's a company called Pendulum that has engineered, it's actually on their website, it's called a GLP-1 probiotic. And it's 3 different bacterial strains that you take to get the same effects as GLP without the side effects.
Have you tried these?
I have,
Do they?
and it also
do you
works
feel like
really
that
well.
You notice them?
I took it this morning, and it. I mean, I'm a total foodie. It's hard for me not to think about.
We've
food.
had dinner together. I know you love food.
And
I mean, I
it
see
does
you eating a
really
lot of pills
good
before
job.
you eat, but yeah.
Yeah, there's usually digestive enzymes and LSD. So the
Why didn't you share?
The last one is it's a little bit harder to get your hands on, but it's a peptide approach, and if you look at other peptides that have a safer side effect profile,
Is this one still legal?
They're-
Because didn't they
so
take a bunch off the market
the
in the peptide
FDA
world?
has cracked down on a lot of peptides.
Right, like the popular ones too. I think
Right.
I saw that you're still taking like BP 157 and ipamorelin and various different ones, but some of the most popular ones are the ones that the FDA has taken away.
Basically,
So you got to stash.
proceed with caution at your own risk. But every company who like sells injectable peptides is still selling injectable peptides.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you
So
can
they just
still
can't
get
police it
almost
all.
of these. They're just, it's not being policed. You know,
it.
who knows how long that'll happen? You know, like you
Got
said,
it.
maybe stock up. But if you look at one called CJC 1295 with ipamorelin, they have crazy names, but that has a similar hunger quelling effect as GLP-1 agonists, and the side effect is it's great for growth hormone. You know, without
Double
the
win.
potential carcinogenic effects of just taking pure growth hormone, it just causes your body to release more of its own.
I've had that
So that's
before,
one
too.
example. There's another one called tesamorelin. Very similar. It gives you great like pre-workout energy, great for muscle gain, fat loss, quells hunger. There's another one that's oral that is still legal called 5-amino-1-MQ. It's a mouthful, but that one for power, for strength, for shutting down appetite.
5-MeO-DMT.
Yeah, exactly. Similar but different. Don't get a mix. Don't take 5-MeO-DMT before you work out. So the stack, the way you use these is you wouldn't take them all day long or all year long every day.
You cycle?
This would be like 5 days on, 2 days off, a couple of 12-week cycles per year. So a sample of this, I realize this is getting kind of nitty gritty, but you would do like tesamorelin peptide in the morning, ipamorelin CJC in the evening, 5-amino-1-MQ when you take the tesamorelin, 5 days on, 2 days off, 12-week cycle of that, and you're looking at being able to manage hunger, gaining muscle, losing fat, and having incredible energy for a workout. That's more like pro tip advanced stuff, whereas something like taking a couple capsules of the hops extract like Calocurb, or using the Akkermansia probiotic, which is great for your gut anyways, those would be like easier examples, not quite as powerful as like an injectable peptide based approach. But I think there's so many alternatives to a GLP peptide that you could go with something else and be safer. And I mean, not to mention the ketones I talked about. Have you actually taken like a shot of ketones before?
No.
It's incredible. I mean, because your workout feels great.
So is the ketone
You have tons of energy.
is it an oil form?
It's
what is it?
So ketones come in different forms. Like the most popular would just be like C8 MCT oil.
MCT oil,
right?
that's what I was thinking.
Which causes the production of ketones when it's metabolized
So is
in
that
the liver.
the kind of form it's in?
That is like a fat. It's like an oil suspension, the C8 MCT. Then there's ketone salts, and these are powders. It's typically similar to what I was talking about,
You
like
mix that with
magnesium
water, then.
citrate, magnesium chelate, or magnesium glycinate, whatever. You can see like beta hydroxybutyrate bound to magnesium, or bound to calcium, or bound to sodium. Those are less expensive. They don't have the nasty taste. And there's companies like, what's one company that sells them? Ketone, I forget. They got like a salted caramel ketone salt flavor. And it's incredible, but the amount of that you have to eat to get like really high levels of ketones because it's bound to a salt, you can get gastric distress. So that's kind of like, it's okay in a smoothie, you'll get like a tiny bump in ketones. Then you get up to the fancier stuff, the drinkable ketones. So this would be like the ketone IQ one that we talked about. That's something called 1,3-butanediol. It's a ketone. It's not like the most powerful, but it'll give you, solid like 4 to 6 hours of pretty clean energy. If you do too much of it, it will make you feel like you've had alcohol. And it's really interesting because in the studies, there's in a lab of this guy named Dr. Frank Veach, and they were studying all the different ketone bodies out there, and they just threw out this one ketone, 1,3-butanediol, because it was in larger doses just making mice stumble around like they were drunk. Because technically, as the name implies, 1,3-butanediol, it's an alcohol. So, this one guy, Frank Yosa, he saw this research and he's like, well, technically you could make this as like a clean alcohol alternative, because unlike alcohol, it doesn't get converted into acetaldehyde and some of these toxic byproducts. It doesn't give you a hangover. And so there's this company called Keto Hall, and they're making like gin and tonic and Moscow Mule and pina colada and these different alcohol alternatives fueled with 1,3-butanediol instead of alcohol. And if you take the 1,3-butanediol in a smaller dose, that would be like quell hunger, have a workout, et cetera. And then the higher dose, it kind of has an alcohol-like effect. And then you have the one that we were talking about earlier, where you could take something like that, 1,3-butanediol, and bind it to beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that would be what's called like a ketone ester. It's an ester bond that they use to bond the two. And this would be something you would take that would just keep your appetite satiated forever. Like when you take it, you're just good for the day. I don't like drink that and then not eat, because you'd waste away to nothing. But like if you were obese or overweight, you wanted an alternative to GLP, and you wanted something like a ketone, it's basically shifting you into the same metabolic state as you'd normally have to fast or restrict carbohydrates for a long time to get to, but you're essentially just drinking yourself into that state. They're just like tiny little shots.
I was going to ask about alcohol, but you've been pretty clear. You drink a little bit of alcohol each night, so I don't want to.
I do.
I
microdose with alcohol. It's a hormetic stressor, a beneficial hormetic stressor.
Amen. There's so much benefit to the mental side of things when you just relax and let yourself do something.
Yeah.
So I feel like we'll skip over alcohol too much, because I think you've been pretty clear about it, and jump into a little bit more of like psychedelics, because I feel like there was a shift for you where you used to kind of experiment with some of that stuff, and then you kind of you moved on from that, and I think maybe religion and faith came into some of that decision-making process. Can you explain that and like where you stand on all that?
That's a juicy question. Okay, so
I literally just got off a phone call with being first call as being part of the board of legalizing psilocybin here in Arizona.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I'm kind of I think
popular,
there's a really big role
especially
for
in Sedona. And there are some great clinical trials on psilocybin for depression, for addiction, for PTSD.
Sure.
I've talked a lot with Matt up at Johns Hopkins, Matt Johnson, and he sent me a lot of the papers that they've done, the recent nicotine or tobacco cessation.
I was actually going to ask about tobacco and asking about that too. But Rick Doblin and his work with MDMA. There's a lot of really positive stuff going on and a lot of really good uses for it. Just like, like we've been talking about some, Modafinil. Not every day, right? But in an acute situation, and having these things as a tool. So,
Right, and you could say the same thing for like some of the studies, particularly in the armed forces or Navy SEAL community with ibogaine and PTSD,
right?
Which I think actually is more effective than ayahuasca in many cases for something like that, which a lot of people were turning to. You look at LSD, fantastic pain-killing and energy effects of all of the compounds that exist that have been studied for shifting the body into a fat-burning state called beta oxidation. LSD is probably the most powerful, which is why half of the ultra running community is using LSD for energy and THC for pain and bliss when going for the like long, 50+ mile runs up in the mountains. That's like the secret stack for ultra runners.
Wow.
I interviewed this guy on my podcast about what these folks who are like on the David Goggins-esque pointy end of masochism are doing, and those are a couple of the molecules. I don't think David Goggins
that's David's
uses
secret. He's
LSD.
been on it forever.
I wouldn't want to see that guy on LSD. And here's why I began to exercise much more caution around what I would say was my pretty rampant cowboyish use of a lot of those compounds.
Can you be a little bit more articulate about what that means when you say rampant cowboy? Is that a daily?
No, but I would probably journey, if that's what you want to call it, like at least every quarter. Okay. Right, on some kind of
like a significant
blend,
dose.
ayahuasca or psilocybin. Yeah, like what would be considered a
hero's dose,
a trip dose or a hero's dose or a therapy dose to go find myself and journal afterwards and have breakthroughs and whatever. The point where I began to change my stance on this, especially regarding people who are just like using it recreationally or overseeing their own protocols, or even putting themselves into the hands of some kind of shaman or overseer who they're not familiar with, who may not have their best interest in mind, going through a state that's a pretty intense state.
Vulnerable state.
That is very vulnerable. I mean, you look at New Yorker Magazine did a whole podcast series about sexual abuse and financial issues, all the things that happen when people are traveling to ayahuasca or traveling to Peru for like ayahuasca tourism.
Which I've done.
Right. So there's that piece. But the biggest piece for me is that traditionally, many of these compounds, the ergo fungus that would serve as like a precursor to a lysergamide like LSD, or higher dose levels of psilocybin or amanita, or ayahuasca, ibogaine, they're used in religions to divinate with the gods, like to cross a spiritual portal where you are able to interact with entities, and entities are able to interact with you. I think that can actually happen. I think that it's not just like old school, old religious woo-woo stuff that you could take psilocybin and go meet with the gods, or you could be on ayahuasca and actually experience like an entity in the Amazonian jungle who you normally wouldn't have been able to see. And the fact that a lot of people will see similar entities, a lot of people who are like atheists or don't believe in a spiritual world will go into an experience with an entheogen or a psychedelic and come out the other end believing in a spiritual dimension, in a spiritual world, because of something they've interacted with that they know is real, gives a lot of credence to this idea. It's not testable theory. You can't really, just like you can't test quantum physics, you can't test whether the green fairy or the praying mantis is actually real or not. But I believe that there are actually entities that you interact with when you cross into a different portal.
They can attach to you too.
They can attach to you. They can possess you. Even though I do think that things like schizophrenia and bipolar and depression can certainly be neurochemical issues. They can be even carcinogenic issues in terms of like tumors in the brain and all sorts of things. I think that they can also be spiritual entity issues. I think that that there's some people who are labeled with schizophrenia or bipolar who, either through a plant medicine experience or something else, actually have an entity on board that's influencing them. So because these entities that, angels, demons, whatever you want to call them, if these have existed for like however many thousands of years since the origin of the world, or whenever they came into our dimension or began to be able to interact with human beings, however long we've been here, who is like that college student who's taken 10 grams of psilocybin in their New York City loft and laying back and listening to music? Who are they to think that they can mess around with this world of entities that's been basically effing with humans for like tens of thousands of years, and just come out and have it be completely safe and without risk?
I mean, you've articulated how many ways that we're energetic beings.
Right.
And if we're just energy, and this is at some energetic frequency, I mean, the spectrum in which we can hear and see is so narrow within the full spectrum that we even know about. So, of course, this has got to be a possibility.
And I think I personally think it's a reality, not just a possibility. And I could be completely wrong, but the fact that these are compounds that have traditionally been used and are still used to divine with entities means that we need to make we need to take far more seriously.
Yeah.
The way that we use them, our approach with them, how they're administered, in what setting they're administered.
Of course.
And furthermore, I think that people who are turning to these as a way to pop a pill and solve an issue, many of them have not done the work, right?
Well,
meaning,
I mean, there's so much like set and setting, of course, but then the therapeutic use, having some practitioner, having a therapist to
Right.
be able to talk through things. I mean, as I was sitting on this board meeting earlier today and talking about just how we can get it legalized, you know, part of it is like I was thinking to myself, so much is psychological. And so you really have to want to solve the problem. And I almost think there has to be like therapy before the therapy, meaning the medicine. Like therapy, dosage plan, and then therapy, right?
well, that's what I tell a lot of people. I'm like, look, you want to go do a heroic dose of psilocybin preferably with a practitioner who is experienced with helping you manage PTSD and talk and journaling and integration afterwards. First, just like grab a journal and maybe some camping gear and leave your phone behind and go off into the wilderness and be with yourself for 2 days. Because I think a lot of the benefits that you get from many of these medicines aren't just the medicine. They're what you're doing afterwards, that time in isolation, the fact that you've been told not to call any of your friends or turn on your phone, and you're just isolated with your thoughts, with a journal, processing. I mean, heck, most people, including myself, would benefit. And this is actually something that's been on my mind a lot lately. I even have a bracelet I just got that says, "Be still and know that I am God," just to remind me to spend more time sitting and contemplating and listening to messages from that spiritual world, from God, just like staring at the wall of the sauna or doing nothing, just cutting off the constant influx of information. And EMF and frequencies.
Sure.
And we live in an era where we don't do that a lot. And so then when you get a chance to escape, when you get a chance to go, do the plant medicines and do the journey and everything, I think in many cases, it can solve issues for people, especially when done in the right set and setting. But I'd just be curious how many of those issues would be solved if that person had gone sans medicine and just gone out with their journal for a couple of days and been with themselves.
Well, it's basically like the medicine
Vision
forces
Quest
you.
style.
I totally agree, Vision Quest style. I love the whole more Native American like approach to life where you kind of have your, you become a man at 14 and you have your vision quests and but yeah, I think that there's so much to be learned from it, but it opens the door for you. You know, it's like
it opens the door.
The
It puts
drug
you
will
into a
open the door and
state
it will
where-
force you into it. Like
where you're ready to be
open,
spiritual.
Here you go.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that, and this is interesting. This might even come back to like the alcohol modafinil discussion. I think, because I still microdose, right? Like a microdose of psilocybin, a microdose with LSD, ayahuasca, a South African bush extract. Like a lot of these are great in the proper set and setting, like Amanita for lucid dreaming, or psilocybin for a day of creative writing, or LSD for a hard workout. I think that you can use these compounds in those settings and even use microdoses of those compounds before you're going to go do something like journaling or a hike or isolation and not open the portals. And this is just pure hypothesis, right?
I agree. I mean, like even a gram of mushrooms, which will be like that's not going to take you into La La Land.
Yeah.
Now you take 3, 4, 5 grams. Like, I mean, my experience, I've done recreational small doses, going to concerts and things like that of a gram, gram and a half. But then, a 5-gram journey that I did, like I am so glad that someone was there because I felt like first, number one, I was like, oh, being human's not real. Holy crap.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how am I ever going to be human again? I'm just a waveform.
Yeah.
And then at one point in time, there was this sort of energy entity that was like, come this way. It was like an upward choice. And they're like, if you want to leave, leave your form behind, if you want to be an ascended master. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, no, I want to be human. But I actually really felt like I had to choose to be human.
And imagine if you weren't psychologically primed to deal with that.
Or knew that I had help, or
and your buddy just gave you, 5 grams and you said, eat this truffle and go have fun. So that's the problem, is they're prevalent, they're widely available, and I think this is going to be a discussion, especially you, like on this board that you're talking about, it's going to be a discussion that occurs more and more. Like for me, my personal metric is if I take a known entheogen and I close my eyes or whatever, and it's psychedelic, I've taken a dangerous amount. Like I'm close to crossing the portal to where the only time that I think would be appropriate to do something like that would be managing PTSD in the proper set and setting.
Yeah.
Possibly end of life therapy, so you've gotten a chance to experience a little bit of what death is prior to death. Obviously, for something like surgery or pain or something like that, if we're talking about a more synthetic like ketamine or something like that. And then lower dosages, I'm fine with. Like anything from like half of a ketamine troche for a meditation and breathwork session to slow the respiratory rate and just kind of calm you down to a dose of psilocybin prior to creative writing. So yeah, it's kind of a murky category. It's like in fitness and in health and nutrition, we like to use baby talk, right? Like all or nothing, eggs bad, eggs good, meat bad, meat good.
That's how we figure it out. Isn't it? It's how you figure it out.
So
you got to go all in
nuances.
on something to figure it out.
Right.
But I agree. I don't think that it needs to be an all in. There can be times where it's all in when in the right set and setting with the right reason, the right purpose. Smaller doses are much safer. But let's face it. Look at like alcohol's legal.
Yeah.
People die of alcohol all the time. Like that.
Alcohol is
it's a
way
very
more
dangerous
than psilocybin.
substance. Exactly. Yeah. And so anything that's brought forward to be legal can be abused. Sugar can be abused. Look at the obesity epidemic that we have. I mean, everything can be abused. So if it's just a matter of going, is this safe to allow people to modulate and monitor for themselves? Nothing is.
Yeah.
Nothing is. And what it really boils down to is your psychological standpoint. It's your emotional body. It's where it's what you have going on inside here than it is the substance. The substance is merely just a tool to cope.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. And it is safer than alcohol.
I agree.
For sure.
I agree. Although I do love a little bit of wine.
I like a glass of wine, maybe a glass of organic wine with about 0.25 of psilocybin, and that's a great evening. Yeah.
Why haven't you invited me to those evenings? I might take a little bit more wine.
No, I just hook you up to NAD.
Let's step into a little bit of conversation about stem cells, PRP, exosomes, that whole world. Like I've done exosomes topically, intravenously. I've done stem cells as well, and they were not mine, so they were. What do you call those then? They
non-autologous.
Non-autologous.
Yeah.
So I had a stem cell facial. I had I had intravenous stem cells as well.
Yeah.
This was probably this is 2 years ago now. Maybe
Wow.
A year or two ago. Down in Costa Rica. So I've tried the whole
You've
thing.
done all the stem cells.
Now I
Have you done the Queen Cleopatra stem cell bath?
No, is that
it's
a thing?
not a thing. No.
Damn it.
No.
Well, you know what could be is I did
the
plasmapheresis.
Yeah, plasmapheresis.
Plasmapheresis. But that could be almost like the queen bath. Maybe.
Possibly.
No?
Yeah.
What do you think of all this stuff?
It's the field of regenerative medicine.
Right.
And it's a big field. It's a rapidly expanding field.
I plan to live to 120 and look really young the whole time.
A lot of cowboying in the field. And yeah, like a big part of it is anti-aging and longevity.
I'm 52.
Are you? I'm 90.
I'm 42.
Yeah. It's like there's an old fable or parable about, I think it might be a Greek one, about somebody who was gifted or cursed, if you want to think about it that way, with a long life, but their body would degrade as they lived that long life, and so they just had to live till they were 150 with cancer and arthritis and dementia and Alzheimer's, all these things. And it's like, well, no, I want to live a long time.
I'd rather look 30 until I was 80
right.
and then cut it.
Right. Exactly. So
and feel 30.
So I mean, there's so much there. I mean, I just got back from Cabo, where I did follistatin gene therapy and stem cell infusion with high dose MSCs from umbilical cells, right? A non-autologous source that you were talking about, and an NK killer cell infusion and a stellate ganglion nerve block for HRV and for the nervous system. And a lot of this is absolutely incredible. I think that I suppose there's so many ways I could go with your question. I think that stem cells are safe. I think that 10 years ago, you would have had to have gotten a high mesenchymal stem cell count from something like your own bone marrow or liposuction from your own fat that they then enzymatically grow, which is illegal in America. And that's why so many stem cell operations popped up overseas, because they couldn't expand. And it kind of sort of changed last year due to some rulings in California, and some companies in the US are starting to expand now. But these days you can, in the US or with the higher stem cell count in a place like Mexico, like Cabo, or some people are going to I believe it's Guatemala or Argentina, there's Panama. You can do not your own stem cells, like an umbilical derived stem cell or a skin cell graft derived stem cell, combine it with exosomes, which you mentioned, which are like a signaling molecule that help the stem cells to do their job better.
Exactly.
And get really, really good effects with faster recovery, because you're not having to tap into your own bone marrow or fat. And anything from an injection into a joint, if done properly,
exactly.
you can literally take, there's one protocol called intraosseous needling. I've done it. I mean, I could barely walk or run 4 years ago. I couldn't play tennis. I couldn't play pickleball. My knee was always swollen. They went into the articulating surface of the femur and the articulating surface of it's either the backs of the patella or the tibia, I don't remember. But it's you drill little holes in it, like you're aerating a lawn, and then you plug those holes up with bone marrow-derived stem cells and regrow the cartilage. There's another protocol, this is Dr. Adil Khan down in Cabo. He's using something called hydrogel, which is like this scaffolding or this matrix that you inject into the joint, overlay the stem cells on top of that, and again,
and
you
it's
can
like binds to
build
it.
cartilage and
Cute.
rebuild things that normally you'd have to do a highly invasive protocol to fix.
My dad did stem cells plus PRP
Yeah.
in both of his shoulders because they were hurt, and
Yeah.
he's about at the end of that 3-month mark where, I mean, it was, couldn't move for the first week or so, but then, it's supposed to be incredible.
Yeah. So
to avoid surgery.
I think that there's so much you can do non-invasively with stem cells that in the field of regenerative medicine, they're great. You can get a stem cell infusion based on the fact that your endogenous pool of available stem cells declines with age, just like your endogenous pool of NAD does, which is why NAD becomes more important to get if you want to maintain vitality as you age. But you can basically have this like age reversal longevity enhancing effects with stem cells using them like that. I know all this because I was the first person to ever get stem cells injected into my dick. So I don't know if I was the first person, but this was how I got into stem cells. I literally didn't know that much about them. I was writing for Men's Health magazine. They wanted me to do like a 6-month foray of all the things that a guy could do to enhance his sexual performance or libido or size or anything. So they had me doing like, no ejaculation for a month, and PRP, and the shockwave therapy, and gas station dick pills, and all this crazy stuff for this big article that came out, I think like 2018.
You're such a lab rat.
Called New Year, New Dick. But that was, oddly enough, even though I can't seem to live down that article, and now I'm the stem cell dick guy.
You brought it up.
That was my fault. That's what got me into stem cells, was I had to get my own stem cells in order to do that. And so I went down to Florida to the US Stem Cell Clinic, and they did liposuction of the fat in my back.
So they did it from fat?
They sucked it out, they expanded, they grew it, and then I did that injection. And it wasn't until later that I started to do like joints and infusions and use stem cells in other ways.
What did you notice with your dick?
I write about it in the article. It's not like a magical cure. I know there's people, I think Brian Johnson, the biohacker guy, is getting a lot. Like he's taken, there's a doctor named Dr. Judd Brandis. I don't even know how much your audience is interested in this stuff. But Dr. Judd Brandis is a men's sexual health physician who recently published a paper that actually shows a demonstrable increase in a guy's size. And that's obviously something a lot of guys are interested in when they do shockwave therapy. And I believe he had PRP as a part of that protocol, which acts a little bit similarly to a stem cell injection.
Right, exactly.
Combined
but the shockwave is just a wand that shoots air.
Right.
I've used it all over my body to break up fascia.
Well, it's not air, it's like a frequency.
It's a frequency, but it feels like air.
It feels like air. Yeah, but it's like a sound wave frequency.
Yeah,
it's acoustic
it's incredible.
shockwave therapy.
It's good use for lots of things.
I have the one that they cell for the penis, and I use it on my big toe right now where I have a bunion and on my knee, because it's useful for just pain management for anything.
Exactly.
The super fancy version of that a lot of physical therapists has is called TRT. It's not testosterone replacement therapy. I forget what it stands for, but anyways, it's a shockwave machine. But Judd, Dr. Brandis' protocol was the PRP. It's very similar to the stem cells. He probably didn't use stem cells because it would have been really expensive for the procedure, combined with the use of a pump and a nitric oxide precursor supplement. And it was something like 8 to 12 weeks, and they saw a noticeable improvement.
In size.
Yeah. And so I think there's something to it. Just, I don't know. I don't want to be crass, but I always just kind of wonder, like, gosh, is the fact that you're just like messing around with that area a whole lot for 12 weeks just generally going to increase size? I don't know. But it's an interesting field, regenerative medicine. I mean, not just sexually, but for beauty, for joints, whatever. I definitely think that we're just like on the cusp of it, especially with gene therapy.
You got to talk about gene therapy.
So
that's the next thing. It's totally the next thing. I need two, okay? I need one for gray hair. I don't want to deal with that anymore. And collagen.
Yeah.
I think if I had those, I'd be able to stay this way
for a long time. What I'm about to tell you would be helpful for the collagen piece.
Okay.
Possibly there's a hair, skin, and nails component, but the follistatin gene therapy is similar. You've heard of like CRISPR gene editing.
Of course.
Like making, whatever, I'm being racist, but like Chinese babies smart or whatever they were doing with Asian super soldiers or whatever.
Basically gene editing.
Yeah, exactly, gene editing. The issue with it is, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Can it be reversed, right? And can you just target like one gene that's going to just trigger one thing? Like let's say staving off muscle loss and improving the health of hair, skin, and nails, and anything that involves collagen and elastin. And there's a gene called follistatin that actually is one of those genes. It's similar to, have you ever heard of like these myostatin knockout bulls, myostatin knockout dogs, rodents? If you Google this, these are like these massive ripped
and they're
like
jacked. They look
dogs,
disproportionately
jacked,
muscular.
They die early of cancer. That's myostatin. That's different than follistatin, but follistatin could be kind of put into the same category. If you are able to keep follistatin from being inhibited, then you would stave off the muscle degradation, the collagen, the elastin degradation that occurs with age.
Exactly.
And there is a research company called MiniCircle that developed a gene therapy that involves a plasmid that's reversible, meaning if you get the gene therapy and then they have a special antibacterial agent that you could get injected into you if you ever wanted to reverse it. And this company called Eterna down in Cabo, where I went and did those stem cells and the killer cell infusion, they do follistatin gene therapy as well. So I looked into it. I think maybe, there's maybe like 100 people now who have actually done that therapy, but like humans, even though there's massive rodent studies and everything. This is still kind of wild, wild west, but I'm comfortable with the fact that it is reversible. So I went down to Cabo with a friend of mine who also did it, and we go into this little room, and this nurse walks in with a syringe, and she literally said to me, she's like, "Are you ready to be superhuman?" I'm like, "I guess so."
Yes.
One injection into that shoulder, one injection into that shoulder, intramuscular.
Whatever.
Feels like a bee sting.
Yeah.
I walk out. Me and my buddy go to the gym the next day, and we're at the gym for like 2 hours.
Your delts look pretty
good. And we thought we'd been there for like 20 minutes. And so this is 8 weeks ago. I was 172 pounds in Cabo and 6% body fat. Right now I'm 180 pounds and 6% body fat. Workouts feel like, the best way I can describe it is you go to the gym and time just goes by super fast. Like a workout that would normally, you'd be there at the gym for an hour and you feel like you've been there an hour and a half. If you ever have those days. This is like every workout like lasts an hour and you feel like you've been there 20 minutes. And it's
just
incredible.
Feels easier.
Yeah, you literally feel as though everything that involves muscle in your body has been turned on.
Holy shit. So you put on 8 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, and there's a newer one that they're developing.
And how much time?
8 weeks.
In 8 weeks?
Which, I mean, any physiologist or strength conditioning goes like,
well,
that's impossible.
I mean, you could do that in a year and be happy about that.
I don't think you could do that. If I should say in a trained individual. I'm a trained individual.
Exactly. You're not
and I'm
starting
a hard
from
gainer.
scratch.
I'm a lean hard gainer. So that would be very difficult. He's coming out with one called Clotho, or that targets a gene called Clotho, that apparently keeps your NAD levels from declining. Not that I want to put all the NAD IV people out of business, but apparently this one works on NAD. And then there's another one that does it for, and I told the doctor when he told me about this, and I forget which gene it is, but I'm like, dude, you're going to be a billionaire. Does it for testosterone, keeps testosterone from declining.
That's another topic.
So I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Anybody that's making telomeres longer? Anybody that's growing telomeres right now?
Yeah. I mean, probably the closest to that is what's his name? Bill. It's like TA Sciences or something like that. He's got a couple of supplements. It's like $600 a bottle, and they're all these products that supposedly reduce the rate at which telomeres shorten. But I mean, you could say the same thing for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. A lot of the other things we've talked about already, like NAD, stem cells. Those are all good. I don't think that telomere testing is kind of old school when it comes to measuring longevity, because it's just like a measurement of a very small sample size of white blood cells that tends to vary from lab to lab depending on where you send it into. And when you look at these newer, what they're called passive aging clocks, probably the most popular one is called a Dunedin pace clock. They took thousands and thousands of people. They tracked them over many, many years. They looked at a whole bunch of different blood markers, and then they correlated that to longevity, to grip strength, to walking speed, to VO2 max, to your risk of damage from smoking, your risk of damage from alcohol. And now they've taken that and created proxies that you can categorize yourself into based on essentially the amount of a drop of blood. So this is what like True Age Diagnostics is doing. Like if you go to this website called the Rejuvenation Olympics, which is like a leaderboard of all the people who are trying to like live a long time and defy aging, they're using the True Age Diagnostics test to test those people because it's such a gold standard. And I mean, this is like a $400 test. You can order it to your house, one drop of blood, and you find out way more than what you get from
not just your biological, not just your epigenetic age, but also what?
Not just what your epigenetic age or your biological age instead of your chronological age, but your predicted VO2 max, your predicted CRP, your predicted cholesterol. I asked the doctor I was talking to about this, like, well, why wouldn't I just go out and like get my inflammation or CRP levels tested or my vitamin D levels tested or do a grip strength test? He's like, well, you could, but the fact that this is so freaking accurate because they've tested it against thousands of people who they followed for so many years, and you can get it from a drop of blood. I mean, this doctor, I didn't release the interview, it's Dr. Matt Dawson, but he said that pretty soon this is going to be the only test that people get. Because it's one drop of blood, it just tells you everything.
Everything, it's easy, $400.
And a lot of people, well, it's like predictive. It's a proxy. It's measuring what your levels are and then predicting what your levels are going to be based on general population. But if you've got a big enough data set to work from, it can be really accurate. I mean, it's really convenient for a lot of people who don't want to do like the 8 different blood tests.
Amen. And that gets expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done some,
super expensive.
Look, years ago when I was talking to you about my own health, it was like, you were like, all right, do these labs. And it was, probably 5 different tests. And one of them is 1,500, another one is 1,000, another one's 300, another one's, and you just go through and it's so much, and it's so much to keep in line.
It's like an executive health panel.
Oh my God. It's like this test, you got to make sure you got to find your cycle. And then this one, you got to make sure you don't eat these things for a few days. You got to make sure you don't have these supplements for a week. And it's like, I felt like I was in like a massive chess match with myself. Of like,
it's a whole process. And I mean, like, it's like $50,000 for an executive health screening, and they're doing all those tests plus a full body MRI, plus a DEXA scan and a brain scan, and then you strip that down to a lot of these tests. And you still would have paid like $10,000 or more over a decade ago if you were to get this from the Princeton Longevity Institute or Duke or something like that. And you could order just about all these tests to your home now and get them done. Namely, the ones you were referring to was like a hormone test, which is usually urine, a gut test, panel, which is stool.
GI test.
Yeah, that's a fun
stool.
one.
That is the worst. Pooping into a hot dog.
Yeah, it's like a hot dog tray. It's literally like the black and white hot dog tray.
It's the most humbling thing in the world. And then right underneath it is picking up my dog's poop from the yard. That's number 2.
Yeah.
Basically anything that has to do with
And then you have to make sure you don't pick out your dog's poop before you do that poop test, or else your results will be pretty funky. And then you've got your basic blood panel.
Yeah.
Then you have a more advanced blood panel that looks at fatty acids and amino acids and micronutrients that wouldn't be in the basic blood panel. And then you've got typically some type of a food allergy panel.
Sensitivity panel. I mean, that took 20 vials to do that one.
And a genetic test. So adding all those up, you're looking at right around probably 4 to 5K.
Yeah.
So we're still talking about something that is cheap relative to how much it used to cost.
Yeah.
Accessible in your home, but still that 4 to 5K is not a price tag that's that accessible to
most people.
To most people.
Right.
$400 for like a blood test, like a true age test, that's getting more into the category of something that a large number of people could afford if that was the only test you had to do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
How are you doing here? Are you
are
you dripped out?
I'm pretty close. Doctor, how am I doing? Did he just leave us here? I can't tell with the bright lights. He's still back there. Another cameo from Dr. Mike Major. I think we're just about.
I shut it off because it wasn't dripping anymore.
Oh, yeah, she's in. Yeah, she's done. I'm on my tail end.
Your Boundless book is totally like the Bible of biohacking. I mean, the thing is so cool. You just open up to what you want to learn about. There's protocols. You said you're writing Boundless 2.0, so.
I wrote it. I finished it 2 weeks ago.
2 Bibles in a life? That's
what
amazing.
I did was, this field moves so fast, right?
Sure.
Like we just talked about a blood test, right? And 10 years from now, it's probably gonna be like, oh no, just hold your phone up to your head and
breathe into it.
Yeah, just breathe. Just just poop like you normally do, but your toilet does it all for you. So the field moves fast, right? Stem cells and anti-aging protocols and nutrition protocols.
Gene therapy.
And new diets and gene therapy. And so it was annoying me to read my book and like see things that I wanted to change. And so I spent the past about 20 weeks, like every day, 2 to 3 hours going through, digging through new research, adding new sections, like fully expanded, like cancer management section, TBI section, like the longevity section, which was already like 100 pages long, just added way more than that. The smart drugs and nootropic section, the fitness and biohacking technology section. I just wrote and added everything, from all the podcasts.
So is it like an amendment of a book, or is what's left of the original?
I would say probably like 40 to 50% right in there. Yeah, maybe more. Yeah, but either way, it's fully updated, and it's like it's going to be the most relevant Bible of biohacking.
Sure.
So
just like the last one was for its point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I mean and
I'll probably have to do it again but I'd rather like write the same book over and over again, just make it better and better every time than like come up with an idea for a new book.
Keep adding. Some stuff doesn't work. Do you take out the things that don't work and you leave the things that do work?
That was a major one. Like some of my
what's the craziest stuff that you were like, oh shit, that's got to come out?
Like a mold eradication protocol that was just like, I feel like it was probably just potentially just recirculating and not really getting it out of the body. Trying to think of something I took out that was just stupid. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was. Because the first book wasn't that bad. I did have like a research team and an editing team, so I don't think there was anything in there that was like.
But there might just be stuff that's dated where you're like, this is just not the efficient way to do it anymore.
Yeah. Even like the stem cell piece, like recommending autologous stem cells, and now we have these like iPSC cells that are taken from a skin graft of a healthy donor and combined with exosomes. You don't need to do like the fat cells or the bone cells anymore. Whereas in the first one, I was like, autologous cells are the shit, and these are the ones you should take. And so, changing stuff up like that, just like chapter by chapter. Updating and adding.
That's cool. When will that be out?
January.
Oh my God, it's literally ready.
Yeah, like it's done. I was reviewing the cover yesterday, which says Boundless 2.0, and it's red, and I don't even know what boundlessbook.com is the old website. I forget what the new website is for it, but we'll figure that out later.
Here's to your Boundless 2.0.
Cheers.
We're pretending like this is 3 to 4 ounces of organic wine, and we've had a little bit of LSD.
There we go. I think I said psilocybin, but we can.
Did you say? Oh, you
you
did
try
say
the LSD
psilocybin.
and the wine first, and
That's
report
right.
back.
Psilocybin
Yeah.
is more
Yeah.
more chill.
You might
LSD
be
gives
up
you some
late.
energy.
Psilocybin you can still sleep on. LSD not so much.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I like
right.
psilocybin anyway.
That's a good one, Dad. Dawn. She likes psilocybin. And my NAD
right.
drip is done. Cool.
Look at that. Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.